Welcome to podcast 132. I have my wife with me today, and we are going to talk about families in construction. Stay with us.
This is the Elevate Construction Podcast, delivering remarkable content for workers, leaders, and companies in construction wanting to take their next step. Get ready to step out of your comfort zone with Jason Schroeder as he encourages you to do better, live a remarkable life, and expect more. Let's go.
Welcome, everybody. I hope you're having a good day. I have my wife, and we're going to have a discussion on how we can best support people in construction and how construction workers and field engineers and superintendents and PMs, anybody in this stressful, high-intense, long-hour industry can really show up well at home and do well, and really how we can elevate families and preserve families. So I'm going to, first of all, say hi, Katie.
Hello.
I am going to kick us off with this question. What is your experience in construction, so that we can get a little bit of, authenticity here and some experience, and then I'll give you my second question.
Okay. My personal experience in construction is that my dad was an electrician, and growing up, oftentimes he had to work 3 hours away from us. So we really didn't see him a lot. And then other times he was working out of state, and he would drive like Sunday nights and show up, to work on Monday mornings, and he would come back Friday nights. And so we'd see him basically Saturday and Sunday. That we did that for just a lot of my childhood. My dad was working far, far away. And my mom, she wasn't the type to move where his jobs went because, it was 18 months here, 2 years there. So, but she was determined to do what she needed to do at home to support him, supporting his family. So that's kind of how I came up. And when
Jason and I got married.
Okay, Jason and I did get married. That's stupid. Cut that out right now.
Hello, everyone. Just a quick note from Reno. No, I did not miss this. This was not an accident. I left it on purpose. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay. And then Jason and I met. I was actually home from college. I was going to BYU, and my parents had moved to California because my dad was working on some projects out there. I met Jason, and while I was helping my dad, I was his gopher. And so when I met and married Jason, I knew that I knew what I was getting into. Like it was just not a foreign thing to me. So no surprises there that, that he was going to have to move from job to job. And throughout his career, sometimes we have just been apart where he's traveled during the week and flown home. For several years, you just came home on the weekends. And what else?
Oh, it was tough.
It was tough, but again, I was raised to just be supportive and not just like be the housewife at home, but that was the partnership that we, created. So I was fine to do that. And so I've, been the primary caretaker of our kids, and he's been the mind maker.
And to prove that, I always come home and I pout and I say, I don't fit in. You guys have your own system. I'm not needed.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. That is perfect. Because now you got me on my high horse. Okay, seriously. So that's the first thing you need to do is not come in and mess up her schedule or his schedule. But just for the sake of argument, he comes home and I have things running. What?
I used to come
used to yesterday? Okay. So I have 11 kids. I have to have a system. I have to bring my A game almost every day. Some days I can slack a little, but for the most part, I have everything on a system. And then when he comes home, he's the audacity to say, you guys don't need me here and I don't fit in. And I'm like, are you kidding me? How could I function as a wife and a mother if I was waiting on him to save me all the time? So, no. But also...
And I always come home, I'm like, let's start lean huddles, and this is how you do this. And and let's do this and let's do that. And I'm like, I'm a construction manager and I drive a Dodge Stratus.
Yeah, he actually says that.
Not exactly that, but no, I think that's a good message, is that if you're in construction, I always say you need a supportive wife. But if you have that supportive wife, better not piss her off by trying to take over when you come home. Anyway, go ahead. I interrupted you.
That's
You're
okay.
probably going to badmouth me again, so
Yeah.
I think it was fine.
No.
But seriously, so let's talk about you a little bit. So if you're a husband or a wife and your spouse works in construction, what is some advice you would give? Like, what can you do to support that career? What are some thoughts?
I think the first thing you have to do is get to a place where you've made a commitment to be like, what are the parameters of his ability to move around with his job? You know, we've known people that have had their spouses not be willing to move. So when they don't have like a project, say in Phoenix, then that individual just gets laid off until the next time the company has a project in Phoenix. So I think the first thing is really talk through as you're, choosing somebody, or as you're choosing this career, make sure that your spouse is on board to be supportive of this lifestyle. This is not a lifestyle where, if you have some 9-to-5 job, it's only ever going to just be that 9-to-5 job. This is a career where there's always going to be, things that come up, emergencies, really busy times when things get hectic in the schedule, or, on the project or whatever. So really communicative about expectations. And so that's the first step, is that your spouse has to be on board and supportive of the career, because it's a hard, it's a hard career.
I agree with that. And I tell people, so I was asked one time in a superintendent boot camp, I was asked what would be some advice that I had for making this work. And I said, you really just have to have a supportive spouse. And that's probably not super fair, so I'm going to reword that right now. You need to have, like Katie said, the parameters or the deal that you've made or the plan that you've made with your spouse, so you know what's going on. So what I see a lot, and I'm saying this for data, not for bragging, but I've been able to train literally hundreds of entry-level field engineers, project engineers, and what I see the most is that these young families will struggle because they haven't made that deal, or somebody thrives, their spouse does understand it, but then the worker or field engineer or superintendent maybe takes advantage of it, or the family, maybe the wife or the husband isn't willing to move, and I'm just saying this for data, I'm not getting after somebody if they personally have decided that, but I literally can think of 8 people right now whose careers have been hindered because they've decided they weren't willing to move, they weren't willing to put in the time, and they weren't willing to put in that sacrifice, which is fine. I just want to be clear that there are, circumstances, there are consequences to that. And I also know people that have just gotten out of it because they weren't willing to deal with the hours, the chaos, the basement flooding at midnight, the safety incident where you have to stay till 8 o'clock, the working Saturdays, the chaos. No matter how much I or anybody advocates team balance, work-life balance, work-life blend, keeping a good schedule, prioritizing family, construction is just hard. And so what Katie and I were talking about, before we got on this podcast, was some people decide not to do that. That wasn't our decision. I think it'd be interesting. So I'd like your thoughts on this, Katie, because I personally feel like it's one thing to be inspired to move someplace and say, I'm going to be here and I'm not going to move. It is another consideration to say, I just am unwilling to move. I think you need to know the difference because it can hurt your career, at least in commercial or in industrial construction, if you're not at least willing to move around at least within those first 5 years. Any thoughts? Did I talk too much?
No, but I think you said everything there was to say. What else would I say about this subject?
Something good?
Oh.
I'm just kidding. Well, what was your decision? You covered that a little bit, but
like I said, I have just always felt like, because of like our roles, that it's my job to try and make a home wherever we need to be, and to not let, the need to stay around family or, stay in a particular location hinder any progress that you would be able to make in your career. And, that's just a personal choice where I'm in a relationship just with Jason, and I love my family, but I'm making a home and a family with Jason. So that's, we need to go wherever he needs to be, to make it work and for his career. And personally, I've always looked at it as an adventure, and I'm far more adventurous than he is. And I'm the first one to be like, oh, there's a project somewhere, let's go there. And he has to kind of, temper that with more, reason and calmness. But
I think that's really, at a minimum, I think that additional perspective is healthy. This might sound a little bit radical, but we're taught a lot of, maybe they're not lies, but they're not absolutely 100% true facts. Like we're taught when we're young that we have to have a 401k. We're taught that we have to go to school to ever make anything of ourselves. We're taught that, probably need to settle down in one location. We're taught, public school your kids, don't homeschool your kids. We're taught, I could just go through all of these different things that society tells us or our parents told us were true, which may be true, but also there are other options. You can move around. You can say, hey, for the first 5-7 years, let's go have an adventure. You can say, hey, maybe I'll homeschool my kids for a while we're doing this. You can, decide, hey, I am going to go with my husband, and it's important for us to financially make it and set up our future, right? I think the key is to decide, right, Kate?
Yeah, decide together. But, to just be willing to, be willing to make a go of it.
So the other question that I would have is, you worry sometimes about being a little bit preachy once we get you on your soapbox. So, but let's be a little preachy, Katie. So like, if you had to coach some of the men out there, especially some of these new families, what advice would you give? They're in construction, working a lot of hours. They got a family, maybe some kids. What's the advice?
My first advice is don't ever be a jerk. Can't say that.
But I was never a jerk. You need to tell them that I've always been perfect. But yeah, they don't need to be jerks.
Oh,
not me.
Wait, what? That's stupid. When you come home from work, it's no excuse to take out how tired you are or how grumpy you are or whatever, crappy thing happened at work. It's no excuse to take it out on your family. You need to be helpful. You need to, whatever it is, try and bathe the kids or read books to them or whatever. Try and be a part, and especially, whatever setup you have with your spouse so that, the other person isn't just pulling all the weight. Have a good, open, communicative relationship about how you're going to divide the things, and then show up and do what you said you would do. And, don't, legitimately, I just did not, my dad was this distant figure for so many years of my life where, he was just working. And I'm just kind of realizing that right this second that, I totally loved my dad, but I don't think that I knew him very well. And so, luckily that's not the culture we live in anymore. And daddies are so important. So, show up.
There is a balance there, but what you just taught me, I hadn't realized it before, but you really need dads to show up in a kind way, because if they have only a certain amount of hours, and you coach me on this all the time, if you only have a certain amount of hours and I have Saturday, it's important for me to not always be the heavy, or to be the heavy at all, really, right? I need to show up, be kind, throw around some hugs, really be the fun person, and be that influence. And I remember that study that said that an impact on a father, on the mood of the children, the approachability of the father, the kindness of the father, is more of a determining factor on the health and longevity of the mental health of the children than even on the mother, right? And so one thing I've appreciated that you've done for me is to say, nope, Jason, I've got this, Well,
because that's the thing, is he has the tendency to want to come in and try and lean everybody out and try and put everybody in line and tune everybody up. And sometimes, especially the boys, so we've got 7 boys, sometimes they do need to tune up, right, from dad. But mostly what I really, really need from him is just like this kind, rejuvenating influence in our home rather than just the grumpy, like, why'd you spill that? Why'd you do that? Like, legit, like, nobody needs you to say that. Like, why are you even home? Go back to work. Like, sorry.
Well, and so what she's saying is hypothetical. This
Right.
has never happened in our home.
Mhm.
Well, actually, in full transparency, I was a jerk the first 12 years of our marriage. I was grumpy when I came home distant. It was 12, 12.5, whatever.
15,
We've only been married 17 years and I'm perfect now. So what I'm saying is that I'd come home grumpy and I always changed diapers.
Intolerant of everything.
Yeah,
else
but I
that
changed
mentioned.
diapers. I changed
You
diapers.
did change diapers,
Yep.
but you were grumpy about it and intolerant.
And finally, I had to learn my role. I am the supportive, loving, helpful, happy father. That's where they want me. That's where they need me. A construction wife or a construction husband where the other spouse works really has to be independent a lot, right? And be home a lot and have their own systems. And so when we go home, it's time to be supportive and loving. And for us guys, let me just do a shout out. Us guys, we're going to complain about cleanliness in the house, finances, and sex. Like those are the three things that we're gonna moan about. And you're gonna have to figure out something when it comes to the physical intimacy, right? I would challenge you guys to problem solve that. But when it comes to the cleanliness of the house, just know that everybody you know, every hero or what do you call them?
Mentor.
Father figure, yeah, mentor or hero in your life. Every male that you know that was in construction that you look up to has been a jerk about the house being clean and had to learn to shut up and get into his or her place. It's really not our place. Like we need to just come home, help out, shut up a little bit, don't criticize, and just do everything we can to be understanding about finances and to make sure that we're getting moments to connect verbally, physically, with moments and things like that. And that's something that I had to learn the hard way. I gave up at trying to control that and to be needy. And then all of a sudden the family figured it out. It's almost like they didn't need me. No, actually, no, they didn't need me. And all I needed to do is just be positive. Anything you want to add there? Here's why I'm asking, Katie, so I don't leave you hanging, is that when we do boot camps, most of the young couples are not thriving. So I would just like you to, if you have any other insights on things that we can do to be successful, what are any closing thoughts you have there from a relationship standpoint?
Well, I don't think I have any advice other than just hang in there because it's hard. The beginning is hard. It was hard for us. It was really hard, especially when he was working in California and we were in Texas and I had, oh my gosh, well, at one point I had 5 kids that were like 5 and under. So like we've been through a lot and I'm like, you have my like greatest sympathy because it's really hard. You just have to work together, be kind, know that it will get better, and that's it.
And don't be fooled by how hard it's going to be. I remember I still have this burned into my head. It kind of I either giggle when I think about this or I start to get emotional and cry. But I remember our heater went out and I'm in California and out in Texas, it's called the wind and the storm. Yeah.
The norther.
Yeah. So this really crazy storm from the north and it came in and my goodness, I don't even want to exaggerate, but I don't know, maybe 18 degrees, 23 degrees. Like it's free.
Like 7
degrees. And I remember my wife, Katie, with 3 little babies in a room. And I remember you had bedspreads and is that what you call them? The top of the bed. You had blankets covering the windows and the doors and they were all pinned up. And you guys were in there without any TV, radio or anything. I don't even know if we had crazy cool phones. You did?
We had
It wasn't shooting deer both ways on the...
No, we had a DVD player.
Okay.
And we had space heaters. And we were trapped in one room. And I would like run out and make lunch because the whole entire house was freezing. And then I would like come back and lock myself. I had 4 kids at the time. And lock myself back we were hiding out in my bedroom. And it was like 3 days, I think, like that. It was crazy. It was good times.
Yeah.
Like pioneer times.
Oh man, it was over the top. And so, just real quick, a message for me is, Katie and I've lived in a messy house before when it was hard. I've been gone. I've had emergencies. We've had fights. I've been a jerk when I've come home. We've worn, thrift store clothes. We've driven old cars, and it gets better. So you're in for a lot of different adventures and things in your life. Just realize it's all a part of the journey, and you don't have to compete with anybody. You just go be you and progress as you can. And I think above all, my message, and I'll give you a closing comment, and you have to have something good because I'm going to do a good job. So my closing message is and I always said this to Katie, and she'd tease me about it. Especially when I'm like, oh, this is just a really part of the, busy part of the project, and it's just really busy right now. She's like, oh, okay, it'll be the same thing in a month. I always used to tease her and say, well, it always gets better. And she'd be like, well, you did this. And I was like, well, was that yesterday? Because I've repented and I'm better today. But really, if you're committed and you stay with it, it does get better. And, if you work through these things, just like you would at work, and problem solve, whether it's finances or cleaning or schedules or schooling or intimacy or anything, you can get through it, and we're cheering for you on our end. So Katie, what would be any last challenges or thoughts from you?
Oh, I don't have any challenges. I would just say, you're builders. So build a life with your spouse and, build up your children, and that's it. I don't even have good words to close with them.
No, I thought it was great because at the end of the day, and this is going to be a good one, I stole it from you. We build people who build buildings. And I would say that we have to have a balanced life. We have to have a healthy life. We have to have healthy families if we're going to show up well at work. And so you have all of our love and encouragement. If you like this podcast, we'll do it again. We'll cover some other topics, but I do want to say there's no reason for even a new couple in construction. There's no reason to not figure out the things that bug us, really just grind and dig in and get through it, and just stay with it long enough to where it works for your family, to where there's a mutual understanding, and you realize that there's chaos in construction. You realize that there's some difficulties there, but you always work back to the ideal where there's balance, where there's health, where there's focus when you come home, and where you can show up and be 100%. Okay? Let's see if we can do this at the same time. We say on we go on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. On we go.
Please join us next time in elevating the entire construction experience for workers, leaders, and companies coast to coast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to share with your construction colleagues and help us spread the word by rating, subscribing, and leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Elevate Construction Podcast.